Here we are again. I am with Sister Mary Eucharista today on the program. Sister, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Sister, I feel like you're part of the family because this
Oh,
is this is a program that is airing on Faith and Family Fridays, and so you are right in the family. And so I love that your sister Mary Eucharista, and so I want to talk about that. Just as we just get launched, when you uh, embrace that name as part of the consecrated life, a sister, what does that mean? Do you ever connect that to the sense of being like like a family kind of spirit to that, or what's the layering? Like, what are some of the layers of meanings of when someone refers to you as sister?
every day I am a sister. This is my identity. I am a sister of the human race, and not only Christ's
Wait a
spouse,
minute.
but
Whoa. You just said something I've
what?
never heard before.
What?
I'm a sister of the human race. At every human being is for you brother or sister because of your consecrated life. I have never heard that identified in that way. Tell me more.
Okay, I am so strong about this that I put it in my name all the time, as no matter what we're writing. On my diploma, I said I want Sister Mary Eucharista. At one place they said, oh no, we only put the person's name with their initials, and I said, no, I want sister. That is my identity. And they said, no, I'm so sorry, sister. I said, well, this other university did do that. And they said, oh, send that to us. And I did. And they said, send us your social security card. We'll put on there whatever name is on your social security card. I said, okay, it's Sister Mary Eucharista. And you should see some of the mail that comes to me. Mr. Sister Eucharista, Sister Eucharista family. I mean, it is hilarious. And I just, roll my eyes and open the envelope. But it's very strong with me. This is a serious commitment to be a sister of the human race. And it is something that everyone needs a sister in their lives. And in fact, I have people who don't have any particular religious persuasion who call me sister, sister. It's just like I'm their sister, and it's like you're a sister and you're my sister, and so you're sister, sister. And it's kind of funny because I call particularly this one person brother, brother, because he's just my brother. And
That's so
I mean,
sweet.
he's not my real brother, but he wants to be identified as my brother. I think God gave us sisters and brothers to kind of push up against and to learn about life and to learn maybe about the other sex, maybe to learn about what it is to have a person who really believes in God or in something. And to be, I feel kind of like I'm a big sister. I'm a big sister. So, even older men who come with problems, I'm there to be their big sister. And I'm their big sister in the Lord, and they know it. And that's the part that makes me so overjoyed that God made me safe for the human race so that I can be there for them.
So, sister, I think about that. Um, One of the ways that I would talk about, like when I'm in men's groups, I'm saying, look, guys, I want you to think about being part of this men's group, less about being friends and more about being brothers. And the distinction that I say is that you choose your friends, you don't choose your brothers. Your brothers are given to you. And so there's a like the hand of divine providence there. There's the hand of God's call there. And so there's a way in which your brothers are given to you, and you feel a greater sense of, let me call it a density of concern. How's that for a phrase? A greater
Woo-hoo!
density of concern for your brothers and your sisters. So
You get a star, Tom. You get a star.
oh, did you like that?
Density of
I'm getting a
concern.
star from a sister, from a nun. I love this. This is great. How come this never happened to me when I was in school? That's my
I don't
problem.
know. It's a gold star. It's right on your forehead, right there. And actually a sign of beatitude. How about that?
Amen. This is awesome. Can I get the corona as well?
Oh, no,
The
no.
light? No, not yet. I'm not there yet.
Not yet.
Oh,
It's all
okay.
right. Keep working. Can't get everything at once.
So the idea that like a brother or a sister, they live in my heart with a particularity, right? There's a special sense of concern so that I can see a difference, a clear difference in my life between, oh, that difficult thing that happened to that family, that tragedy that happened to that group over there, oh, that terrible scourge that's hit that situation, that neighborhood, that nation. And I can see it, but I don't feel it the way that I feel a text that comes into my family group chat with my brothers and sisters, and something is happening to one of their lives. There's something about a sister or a brother that has that density of concern that I bear within me out of love. So, you, sister, as a sister of every human being that lives, how do you live that out? How does that impact your prayer? How does that impact your consciousness of going about your day-to-day life?
Okay, now you asked 3 questions, so I'll do my best here. First of all, when we are called sister, I think the church is so beautiful and familial to give priests the title of father, and mother superiors the title of mother, and religious sisters the title of sister, and religious brothers the title of brother. This is a very familial effort, and it's a familial reality. This is where people can be at home. When I was in the Holy Land last September, people would come up to me from anywhere because they saw that, oh, there's a nun, there's a sister. And they would come up and talk to me like I was their sister. It's like, sister, I'm from Australia, and I belong to this parish. And would you please pray for my uncle who is having troubles right now? And it's like, absolutely, I will pray for your uncle. And in the same breath, someone else is coming up saying, I'm in a pilgrimage here from, Germany. And I would like to know, can you please pray for me? And it's like, yes, I will. I will. And then you blink again, and here's a priest from Spain saying, uh, sister, uh, me, Spain. And I'm like, hi, are you brother or father? He's like, uh, padre. And I'm like, oh, padre. And what a joy. And he's in his habit. I'm in my habit. I don't know him from Adam, except now he's my brother because he just came up and said this, but I could have spotted him across a room and said, that's my brother. And he would look at me across the room and say, there's a sister, because they always put that little E sound before the S's. Anyway, there's one way that I have experienced almost more intimately, that idea of you can never go anywhere dressed like this without people addressing you as, even kids will come up sometimes and say, hello, sister. And it's like, I'll say, well, hello. And by the fact that I've responded, they look at their friends and they're like, I know what to call her. She's a sister. And I am their sister. I am the sister of the human race. So when I pray, when all of us pray in the convent chapel, we are praying as sisters of the human race, and we're offering our prayers to the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in the name of the church, but also in the name of Christ. And we're able to actually know that I am their sister. Jesus is my brother. Okay, he's my spouse too. So it gets confusing, but at any rate, this is where we have to be able to uh, understand ourselves and what our call is in relation. A sister living essentially a public life and going out among human beings. She is going to be observed by many different beings, and they're all going to be having a thought. Some of those thoughts are, oh, that looks like the book I read when I was a kid. Some thoughts are, oh my goodness, I remember Sister Cecilia when I was in 6th grade. Another thought might be, hey, don't nuns carry rulers in their pocket? Aren't they mean? I think they are. Let's go say hi and see what she does, you know? And it's like, I'm a screen upon which people are projecting their thoughts and ideas about about religious sisters, but mostly I am a sign in the world, a prophetic sign that God lives, and that there is an eternal life after this that I think these Catholics believe, right? And if I'm in any doubt, I can go ask her because she would know the answer.
So, Sister, I'm talking with Sister Mary Eucharista today. She is a beloved guest and a true sister in Christ of mine. And I enjoy you so much, Sister Mary Eucharista.
Thank you, Tom.
In the news, there have been some kind of infamous others who wear a form of habit. I'm sure you've been asked about this because of its recent appearance. I'm talking about Dodger Stadium and the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. St. Thomas Aquinas said that we are called upon to love our enemies, and we love our enemies not under the aspect at which they are an enemy to us, but we love them under the aspect at which they are also a sharer of a common humanity. And that sounds a bit like what you're talking about, Sister, because loving your enemies, boy, I get a bit enraged. I get a bit disgusted. I feel like words like sacrilege and blasphemy show up inside of me. And when you see the holy, the pious way we ought to be connecting to those who wear a religious habit, and then to see it on display in that format, the way that these men dressing like women are doing this. How do you live out your sense of, you know what, they are not outside the care that I have for them as human beings? How do you do that? What have you said when folks have brought that kind of situation in front of you?
I have said that I'm praying for them. And I know that if they were not in the political realm, but if they were to meet me on the sidewalk, I would try to forge a relationship with them. Because obviously, if they truly knew, if you study philosophy, Socrates says that that people do wrong things out of ignorance. And if they really knew, that they would not do the thing that they're doing. And Aristotle goes further and he says, no, there is something within the human heart that tells us that we are doing wrong. I think that I will never be the judge of this, but I am certainly very saddened, grieved, and at times angered when I see actions that are done in sacrilege and blasphemy, sort of knowing what's going on, but I can't imagine that somebody would do this in reality. But I'm not blind to the reality that probably is there, that there is a lot of knowledge about what is happening here. I have not myself seen this. I've only seen pictures of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. I am friends with many people that you wouldn't imagine I would be friends with. I have friends who are Buddhists, friends who are of all different races, friends who are Protestant, friends who are of all interfaith. I know people from the Sikh religion. I am friends with many people. I have never met anyone who knew me and then would willingly show blasphemy in front of me. And I almost know that some people in the world, it seems weird, and I almost am regretful having to say this in an open way, but Jesus loves every one of those men. Mm-hmm. There's a one woman in there too, a cisgender woman. And she is, I won't say her name because it's suggestive. And you just have to know that they're getting a huge guffaw out of something that is very sacred. And I think I think religious sisters are being used and abused out there as actions are done to abuse our faith and hurt the human consciousness about Jesus Christ. Obviously, there is deep ignorance happening here for the sake of a laugh. And at the same time, I just have to ask myself, how is Jesus perceiving this? And go with what I get on an answer about that. And Saint Francis de Sales says to err on the side of charity is much more preferable than to err on the side of sin, or I mean other things. So that's where I choose to err on the side of charity, and imagine that these people cannot possibly truly know God and do this against him. I think once they knew the mercy of Christ, they would have to either drop out or change things. That's my perception. As a sister of these people, I would sister them. That's what I would do, and I would not be afraid of doing that.
I love what you just said. I would sister them. You're coming up with some of the greatest phrases in this
Hey,
interview, sister. I love it, Mister
as I,
Sister. I
oh
would
yeah, yeah,
sister
yeah,
them, sister of the human race. Man,
yeah.
you're doing some spiritual flexing here. So this is
Thank
awesome.
you.
All
Wow.
right,
Ooh,
spiritual flexing. Hey, I'm doing some too, right?
so
Coming
are
up with phrases
you.
like that. Let's
Check it
go.
out.
So, sister, you actually provide a nice bridge to a theme that is probably much closer to the lives of the majority of folks listening or watching. And that is not so much that I feel a sense of disgust towards others, but more that I feel a sense of disgust towards myself.
Yes.
And that happens when I sin. St. John Paul II said that sin has transitive and intransitive effects, that when we act in a way that has consequences on the world, but when we act, it has a reflexive impact on ourselves. And the impact it has on ourselves is even more profound than it has on the world. So that when we sin, we're doing something hateful, and that hateful thing is expressed in the world. But in sinning, we become hateful to ourselves. And you stop and say, what a terrible state to be in, where we feel a sense of disgust, hatred towards self, or tremendous sense of guilt and shame that I thought this, I spoke this, I did this, or I avoided this. And that brings us right to the heart of your silent day of prayer next Wednesday, the 28th, from 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon at the Immaculate Heart Retreat Center. It's on the trouble of guilt. Oh no, here we go again. I just did a very big wind up there. So help us enter into that topic of folks that are listening who are less concerned about a sense of disgust towards some folks that are troubled, who are living far away from them and they're never going to see them, and instead are troubled when they look in the mirror and the sense of self-hatred or disgust they feel towards themselves because of what they live within them.
Well, as I got into the material for this day of prayer, I started wondering, wow, this is going to take more than a day of prayer, because it's a lot. This understanding of guilt, there is true guilt and there's false guilt, but the false guilt goes down so many different roads that I am almost like I continue to do and redo the slides. I always do a PowerPoint with my days of prayer, and I think it hits people with two senses. It's better than if I'm just speaking to them. And oftentimes when you catch sight of a beautiful slide that has Jesus on it, paired with words that I'm trying to keep as simple as I can so that it goes in easily. I also give a handout so that they know they don't have to be taking notes rapidly while I'm trying to help them to know the truth, not just to hear it briefly and then it floats out, with the next breath. Because I don't know about you, but my short-term memory gets shorter and shorter as I get older. And I need something in front of me sometimes. But this guilt is not so much about self-loathing or shame as just a negative aspect of perhaps actions done that may be sinful or may not be sinful. And I have found that especially people, and when they say Catholic guilt, and then people laugh and they go, oh, yeah, Catholic guilt. And then I hear other people say, oh, Catholic guilt, that's a misnomer. That's not even true. And it's like, well, I don't know. I'm in the middle on that one, because when you have good parents who kind of were never told not to treat your little children as moral agents yet, you can kind of be invested with a guilt that is about perfectionism, or maybe even Pelagianism, where I didn't try hard enough. I didn't work hard enough on this thing. I didn't treat him well. And now you're kind of stuck in a cycle. And this cycle is not any more healthy than a person who goes about doing sin and then not feeling guilt. Both of those are omission. It's one of them is an omission. The other is like an overarching sense of negativity, which is not from God. So what we're going to do at this day of prayer is identify these various kinds of things we call guilt. I mean, there's so many words. There's remorse, there's regret, there's shame, there's false guilt, there's true guilt. We're going to break these things down, look at what St. Thomas Aquinas kind of does. I always kind of get a little cocktail of St. Thomas Aquinas and St. John Paul II. And we work in there with some of this and, understand human nature through the understanding of theology of the body. And this is where guilt is not something that burdens holiness. Holiness is being possessed by God. It is not about all the actions that I'm doing. But our emotions are in here too. And when we'll look at some of our emotions and the various ways our emotions touch or are touched by our actions. And depending on how we have been treated as children, what our understanding has been with certain ways that maybe impacted us as moral actions but never were, how confusing this can be. So I don't want to my intent during this day of prayer is not to load people down with 1,000 definitions, but it's to proclaim the good news that the resurrection breaks through all of the negativity in our lives. And if we have a wrongness of conscience, perhaps, or just a perfectionistic cycle that we are stuck in, that Jesus can break through that and come and save us and let us know we're his, and he has already saved us, and we can let go. We've already been to confession. Stop the cycle, get off the negative wagon, and don't go there anymore. And also in the process to treat ourselves with respect. Strangely, I remember once being in a therapist's office, and I had just said some things that I needed help on, and it involved the actions of someone. And as I went into the description of this, and then I was asked more and more questions, and I was kind of telling the story of things, I suddenly was like attacked by my own sense of like, I can't say that about this person. Oh my goodness. Okay, I take it all back. And by the end of it, I had just totally backtracked to, or backpedaled to, this person. Nothing ever was wrong. Everything was fine. It's my problem. I don't know what's wrong here. It must be me. And he's like, sister, what's going on? I was like, I don't know. I guess I feel really guilty about having said this to you. Even though I wasn't blaming this person, I was simply telling the story. but I wanted it to be different because I didn't want anyone outside of my family to know anything about this. And I was like, you know, okay, let me just say it. I was angry at my mother. And I was going to defend my mother with a sword at the end of it because I was like, okay, just a minute. I take it all back. Nothing is wrong with my mom. My mom was the best mom you could ever have. And this therapist who was very old knew what was going on. He said, so tell me what's happening. I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I take it all back. It wasn't, well, I didn't say it wasn't true. I just said, it's not important. It doesn't matter. And he said, I'm getting a suspicion that this is very important. In fact, so important that if we were to let it go, that might be something we need to feel bad about. And it wasn't anything really bad that my mom had said or done. It was just ways that things had impacted me when I was young.
Mhm.
And even now I feel a little bit of like, oh, you're on, shaky ground here. Get out of there. And it's like, no, what this is a kind of guilt that came back that I called guilt. And I said, the guilt won't stop. I just don't know how to stop the guilt. And he said, talk to it. I was like, I tried to kind of kick it out of the way. It just won't go. And he said, have you ever tried just being kind to it? And I was like, okay, this is so weird. I would never tell anyone about this. And here I am talking about this publicly. And I said, okay, let me try that. So I just said very quietly within myself, guilt. This is what he said. He said, guilt has been your friend in the past, this kind of guilt. This is not about true guilt. This is about a kind of perfectionistic thing that comes back and haunts you if you didn't do something according to someone else's standards. And here I was talking to this guilt. And he said, first of all, sister, I'm concerned about the violence of you wanting to kick away that guilt. And then I said, okay. And he said, maybe if you were more gentle and just invited the guilt to go away, because the guilt has been your friend in the past, this kind of guilt. So I talked to it, and it's like the doors opened and I was free for that moment of this cycle that I was stuck in. And I was so impressed by that. I thought, how did that just go away? I mean, I've been trying to kick that thing out of my life for the longest time. And I didn't know what to call it really. But as we talked, I realized it was a false sense of guilt. And it was standing in my way. And as I have spoken to people through the years, they have said, wow, I want to know more about this. And that's where I got this idea. And I'll say, particularly women seem to be saddled with a kind of perfectionistic guilt feeling that is really a negative feeling that has come in to warn them, don't say this, don't do that in front of this other person, because you're going to have something happen to you. And if you get into the study or therapy of IFS, it's called internal family systems, you'll find that there are parts of ourselves that they call like firefighters and police officers that are like guarding the doors and saying, no, don't do that. And what had happened was during that therapy session, I understood this later, that like a firefighter, what was a very strong part of myself, got in front of the doorway and said, don't say stuff about your mom. It's no one's business. Mom is sacred. Nobody steps on the ground that holds mom. This is where we are loyal in our family, and we don't talk about this. And it's like, woo, that's a lot. That's a lot. And it goes back to early childhood. It goes back to loyalty to our family. It goes back to things we've heard our parents say. It goes back to all kinds of influences, that we understand as human beings, that we understand as families. But being a sister of the human race, I decided that this would be something that we could talk about and pray over and examine and find remedies for. as we go forward in our spiritual lives. I learned about IFS, Internal Family Systems, through the certification that I took for spiritual direction, which is headed by Father Boniface Hicks. And we actually had a good counselor who was one of our teachers, our professors, during the time that I took my cert. And it was in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, through St. Vincent's College. And that's where the IFS, or the Institute of Ministry Formation, was done for me to get my certification. So it really made me happy that I was able to understand the parts of ourselves and actually add that into some of the things that I talk about in days of prayer or retreats, and be able to explain a little bit about how our minds work. I just noticed some of the monks really thought that was a good system, and that this Catholic counselor was also very impressed with how this system, internal family systems, can explain some of the ways that we understand ourselves, our behavior, and our thinking process.
Sister, that's very powerful what you shared. You shared a lot there, and I have like 17 follow-up questions. Okay, I'm talking to Sister Mary Eucharista, and I want to start with I'm going to kind of speak back to you language that came from my spiritual director when it was associated with learning to live well with my own inner experience that was negative. And so I think there's a lot of commonality here. And this kind of goes to the gift of nurturing a prayer life and having a spiritual director, having someone help lead you into these things, which I know you do at the Immaculate Heart Retreat Center, and offering this day of prayer is such a gift. What he said to me, this beautiful holy priest of God, said was, Tom, you need to learn to live well. You're being invited to learn to live well and to learn to love yourself as someone, even that one who experiences these negative emotions. Learn to love yourself even as someone who is experiencing these negative things. So it's not the same thing as saying, I love that these negative things are happening inside of me, but I'm able to love myself, even that one who is experiencing these negative things inside of me. And so it's a way of not, you use the phrase kicking it. You're going to kick this out, kick this out, kick this away. And by doing that, there's a kind of rejection of self that is preventing me from experiencing the transformation that will come if I can sort out and distinguish the difference between embracing that negative thing as a negative thing and embracing myself as someone in whom this negative thing is happening. That is a subtle but profoundly important distinction that it often will take a wise spiritual director or counselor who understands our tradition and good human psychology to be able to say, the Lord wants to shepherd you into a place of freedom that is beyond what you feel like is a stuck place.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's how it was shared with me. How does that language sound to you?
I think it is gentle and wise, and it is how Jesus perceives us. He is our Lord, he is our Savior, but he is also our brother in the sense that he has become human for us. He did not have to do this. And when he speaks of the Good Shepherd, he says, I am the Good Shepherd, and I lay down my life for my sheep. He is standing at the doorway. The shepherd, the Good Shepherd in the Holy Land, the shepherd always sits in the gateway of the shepherd fold. When it comes home at night, there's a little space, and it's like this gate part, and it is the gate of the sheepfold, and it is where the shepherd sits. And he could sit there all night, or he might take breaks and someone else will go there, but nothing goes by that shepherd. And Jesus is comforting us in our darkness and our negative thoughts. And, you know, when you mentioned what I had just said about kicking away the guilt, kicking it away, I I kept trying to do it and it would just kind of suck back. It would just be like, it was like even faster. I would in my mind kick it and it would right back. And it's like, I'm going to defend you no matter what, no matter what, no matter what. But it didn't do any good. As soon as I said, you can go away now because I don't need you right now. Thank you for what you have done. And do you see the difference between the violence of even, I mean, I'm not going to really physically kick my guilt, but I am going to speak respectfully. And as soon as I did, very graciously, the guilt just left me. And I was so astounded by that. It took it, I mean, I still think about it today. And this was so many years ago. This was in the 90s. And I just am stunned by the way that speaking to ourselves with respect, we are not Jesus. God created us. Jesus loves us. We are worthy by the fact that God made us and Jesus loves us. The Holy Spirit abides in us. He chose us as his temple. This profoundly astounding knowledge and the fact that God allows us, he gave us his divine blood in our veins by baptism. We are divine and welcome at the table of the Lamb. How many ways can this come in? And meanwhile, we have self-loathing and we're stuck in a cycle of guilt over stupid perfectionism that doesn't matter anyway. Nobody, if we ever imagined, oh, everybody's thinking about me doing this, and it's like, honey, if you really knew it, really nobody's thinking about you doing this. And you can let it go. And it's like, oh my gosh, really, there is some stuck pride in here too. And there's a humility that is waiting to land. And I think that understanding how we are dealing with those elements of negativity within ourselves that are singing a very loud song that we can't hear any comfort over the din. When Jesus comes to bring us his humility during this month of the Sacred Heart, Jesus, meek and humble of heart, make our hearts like unto thine. This is where we can understand humility in a more realistic way, and also understand that we can just let that perfectionism and that negative stuff just go. And when it comes back, just invite it to go again, just go. And also not to treat ourselves with violence, but with respect, the same respect we would give to Jesus, the same respect we would give to our neighbor. All of this is part of this day of prayer. All of this is part of an understanding of an inner life that we are living, and perhaps wondering, why does the negative thinking come in like this? Well, it comes from one of three things: the world, the flesh, which is what we've been talking about. The flesh is us with the effects of original sin, or the devil. And the devil, if he senses that there is some level of self-loathing that could be there, the devil will do its best. And I don't assign any kind of sex to the devil because he doesn't have sex anyway, but also, I don't know, it will begin to like expand that. Like if we by our perfectionism, let's say, are experiencing negative thoughts and we can't throw them off or get them off track or invite them to go, or something's just not working, the devil will try its best to just expand and decrease our faith, hope, and trust. When we experience an increase of faith, hope, and trust, that's when we know it's God's voice. And that's when we know we're on the right track. And those negative thoughts can just float out the window because we now have an increase of faith, hope, and trust, and we know God's voice is back.
That's so beautiful, sister. I think about the way in which what Aquinas, what you pay attention to grows stronger. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you pay attention to and nurture negative feelings, then it's going to grow in you. And yes. I think that's one of the great gifts of your upcoming Silent Day of Prayer. is that you give folks a landing spot, right? They don't have to like, oh, I'll take some time today, or I'll make some time tomorrow. And then it just gets crowded out by busyness and other activities. Well, lock it on your calendar. Come on out next Wednesday, the 28th, which is a beautiful day, 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. Give over that time to the Lord and watch how this sense of guilt, perfectionism, or resistance to experiencing guilt, whatever those strong emotions are that are holding us back, that we want to kick out and attack, that just keep clinging to us. Watch how the Lord will dissolve them. Watch how the Lord will give us the grace of gentleness towards ourselves. I think that's a beautiful gift. It's happening at the Immaculate Heart Retreat Center on the South Hill of Spokane. You can go to ihrc.net to be able to register and to get more information about it. Sister, I'm going to just keep asking you. It sounds as if, Sister, that the extremes seem to meet. And what I mean is this. You talked about two different forms of guilt. And the first is this idea of being overly sensitized to guilt, scrupulosity. I see myself guilty and falling short at every turn, and I kind of create a trap for myself. And on the other hand is the resistance to having any capacity to acknowledge a sense of guilt, and how those two can live together, even though they're the extreme opposite. The resistance to acknowledging any guilt whatsoever and a hypersensitivity to always falling short. And how the Lord wants us to be in the middle. You talked about the humility of being gentle enough with ourselves to embrace the gentleness that the Good Shepherd has for us, to be able to shed both extremes. You seem to emphasize a bit more the hypersensitivity, the perfectionism that's connected with guilt. Do you also experience that sense of the other extreme as well, where folks are resistant at all to taking any accountability for their lives or any acknowledgement of falling short?
Yes, in fact, the church teaches in St. Thomas Aquinas, of course, we have to mention our favorite there, but he is very strong about the idea of the right conscience. And it is right conscience is in the center, and you have laxity on one side, and you have scrupulosity on the other, on either side of right conscience. When we are experiencing either laxity or scrupulosity, we are involved in a wrong conscience. And typically, people going to a day of prayer are not going to be so much, finding difficulty with laxity, although laxity is in all of our lives on some level. I would say perhaps at the risk of being scrupulous, people who are addicted cannot just shake an addiction because they decided to change their lives. Mm-hmm. Addictions have a life of their own, and it's very risky not to have someone with you on that, either a spiritual director or a priest in confession or a counselor. But addiction needs special treatment, and people can go to confession every day and still have an addiction, but they are getting the grace at each reconciliation to strengthen that weakness, and they should not shy away from that. But if any kind of scrupulosity continues, that's not being scrupulous to confess it. Let's say a porn addict or someone who is, they need special help. A sex addict needs special help. And in committing the sin, an addiction does lessen the culpability down the road, but it doesn't, in the beginning, certain decisions are made, and that's what prepared the way for the addiction. And that's where then there's a wrestling match going on in spirit and flesh. And as St. Paul says, I do the things I shouldn't do, and I don't do the things that I should. Well, he's speaking about the human condition with the effects of original sin. Mm-hmm. And it's the magnitude of our error and our problems with the effects of original sin is so great that it really almost helps us to understand how God can work with us and bring about holiness in us by possessing us when we are finally out of that control method where we can release ourselves totally to the heart of God. And that takes a lot because it's not natural for us to do that, especially when we have grown into adults, to take a childlike sense of, Lord, take my heart, as St. Ignatius of Loyola says, take my being, take my mind, and take all of this. It is yours. I desire nothing but you. This takes a great deal of courage. We can say that prayer of St. Ignatius with a great glibness, but to really mean it is really, really hard. It's like total consecration to Jesus through Mary. You give everything. And if you don't mean it, then you're not really consecrating yourself. But if you really mean it, it's a lot. It's going on. And hopefully with the good judgment of going to a good spiritual director, a priest who will assist you in confession, or a therapist, a good therapist. All three of those sometimes are needed for certain things, but there just aren't enough people to go around sometimes. And that's where good reading can help us as well. And that's where forming a right conscience keeps us in the middle, where laxness is not a virtue. Scrupulosity is not a virtue. The middle is right conscience. And that's where pulling those elements together, I think the more that if a person is highly scrupulous, as that person allows herself to gravitate towards right conscience again, she will also find that there is a lack of laxness as well. That laxity will also be drawn into right conscience. If a person is super lax and they are working towards right conscience, they will also not be attracted towards scrupulosity with good direction. So I think both of those may be present in the soul at the same time, but as one is working towards right conscience, then those both sides will be pulling in. Does that make it a little more clear?
Yeah, I love what you're saying. I love the wonderful teaching that's happening here. You mentioned good reading and following good guidance, and so right conscience, like the voice of God. So being able to come to places and spaces where that can happen is such a gift. There was a book that was recommended to me around this theme. It was called Spirituality and the Gentle Life by Adrian von Kamm. It was in like 1984 or 85 that book was recommended to me, Spirituality and the Gentle Life. And it a number of the things that I've shared today are traced back to that book. That our
Nice.
incapacity to be gentle with others and our quickness to be severe, to be caustic, to be sarcastic, to be negative is traced back to our inability to be gentle with ourselves. Yes. And one of the remedies is simply coming before the Lord and allowing the Lord to love us. We don't have to say anything. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to have accomplished anything. You talked about that Pelagian spirit, but just be there and allow the Lord, permit the Lord, ask the Lord to just love you, and letting those waves of love wash over you, wash over you, wash over you. And then even taking a step to say, Lord, who am I to you? We're so often quick to say, Lord, what do you want me to do for you? But if we ever were willing to take the risk of coming before the Lord in prayer, especially in like the presence of the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament, and just saying, Lord, who am I to you? Who am I in your eyes? And just reveal that to me, Lord. And then just letting him wash over me with love, wash over me with love. It'll smooth out those rough edges. It'll sever connections to those harsh memories that make me want to be so defensive and so sarcastic. And it'll sow seeds in me of having been affirmed and celebrated by the Lord to then want to celebrate and affirm others.
You know, I love how you are saying this. This is something that is hard for people who have tried really hard in the spiritual life and adapted that with unconsciously that Pelagian spirit of Pelagianism is a heresy that demands that you work very hard for your salvation, and only by your own efforts will you gain it. And that's really in contrast to a true Catholic spirit, which is to do your best, but to let the Lord do his work in us, and to go to the sacraments, do the things that need to be done, but to know that if we fail, it's not due to God's power is greater every time. And yes, to do our best, but not to imagine that we are weightlifters, trying to achieve God's, the more that we do this, the Lord will see this and approve of me. This is never going to be the spirit that draws us into that childlike place where God is embracing us as a parent, and we are receiving him and loving him and allowing him to love us. God made us as human beings, not human doings. And that human doingness can be part of an ardent soul's journey where they begin to realize it's not so much in my efforts. Am I trying to earn salvation? If I am, then I'm on the wrong track. And to permit the Lord to love me, to allow the Lord to love me. One time in a coffee and contemplation event that I had invited someone to come and speak, and he said, let the Lord love you. Let the Lord heal you. Let the Lord touch you. All of it was making kind of these bristles and things come out on me. And I was like, what in the world is the matter with me? It's like, no, 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 no. And later I did talk about this with my spiritual director. And the spiritual director said, to let Jesus in takes a lot of, you agree to let this powerful being come into your life. And I've been a nun for many years. I could not believe how I resisted letting. That word let is like, I was like nail biting in my soul. And I was thinking, what in the world's the matter with me? Jesus, you come on in here. And it's like, wait, there we go again with that. I'm going to push all my feelings aside here. No, why am I feeling this way? Well, Jesus is very powerful. Like Bishop Robert Barron says, Jesus is dangerous. Remember in C.S. Lewis, Aslan was not a tame lion. Jesus is powerful. To let him in takes some courage and humility. And, I have to start acknowledging, wow, certain things I'm afraid. Why am I afraid? Well, because I guess I never faced the reality of knowing Jesus is intimidating on some levels. And when he looks at me with his beautiful eyes and I melt in his presence, then I want him to have whatever. This is all yours, Lord. I am yours. This is Jesus territory now. And sometimes we have to renew that over and over and over and get different aspects of ourselves to acknowledge Jesus is Lord. One time I was talking to Mother Catherine Joseph, and she said,
and sister, this is our last story because we are out of time. So you've got like 20 seconds to tell a Mother Joseph story.
Awesome. Yeah,
or we're going to have to hold off for another time. So you tell me.
Well, she said, certain parts of ourselves aren't redeemed. We just have to kind of get those, ask for the Lord to redeem those. I said, wait, I think all of creation is redeemed. Am I not right? Maybe they're not evangelized. And that will be my prayer for everyone going to this day of prayer, and any day of prayer, that all parts of ourselves can be evangelized by the great evangelizer, the good news himself, Jesus. And he is here, meek, gentle, and humble of heart, and waiting for us to come to him.
Amen. That's Sister Mary Eucharista. You do not want to miss that beautiful day of prayer, which is next Wednesday, the 28th, 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon at the Immaculate Heart Retreat Center, ihrc.net, to sign up for it. Come and be with Sister Mary Eucharista and so many other wonderful faithful. Thanks, Sister, for being with me today.
Thank you, Tom. God bless you and everyone else.